Welcome to Commercial Realty Advisors News Break. I'm Ed Lambert. Today we'll discuss properties of particular interest, financial news, and a segment we called For Your Information about items of local interest, and our interview. First up, of particular interest. Motorcar Express Lube, located right there on Route 28 in West Yarmouth. Motorcar Express Lube is an express auto service company specializing in lubes, oil changes, and quick service. Established in 2009, the company employs 5 people and is available for purchase with the real estate for $599,000 or the business only $100,000. Next up, we have Blue Canoe Restaurant. It's a 50-seat restaurant right on the beach in Vineyard Haven. The business is available for acquisition for $115,000. We are also offering a 34,000 square foot commercial building at the Bourne Rotary. This property is suitable for any commercial or industrial use with high ceilings, overhead doors, a loading dock, access to a major highway, and is priced at $1,649,000. Finally, we're offering a double bay commercial condominium at the Sandwich Industrial Park at 15 Jan Sebastian Drive. This double unit has approximately 2,200 square feet of space and was renovated when purchased. The office space was combined, but the condo units have been left separate. It's a great opportunity to acquire both properties at this desirable location for $185,000. In today's financial news, the U.S. government's Youth Jobs Program is facing deep cuts in Massachusetts. The Boston Globe reports that lawmakers are considering additional deep cuts in funding for a youth summer jobs program, even as teen unemployment levels are near record levels. This, coupled with the holdup of the H-2B visas, could be especially difficult for Cape employers looking for seasonal workers. In a related story, senators have reached a deal on high-tech visas. Senators are working to resolve a key issue on immigration legislation and have agreed to compromise on covering expansion of a high-tech visa program. This focus on high-tech visas has put on the front burner in response to the Boston Marathon bombings, but still has hurdles to overcome. The Dow Jones Industrial Averages are up 5.98% over April in a show of slow but steady performance. And the price of the 6-month Treasury bill stands at $100.86 with a yield of a penny. For your information today, Lowe's, one of the largest home improvement stores, has a plan for building 100,000 square feet and a 28,000 square foot garden center in Dennis. Lowe's is a development of regional impact and must submit their application to the Cape Cod Commission. The agency will then decide whether the project's benefits outweigh its detriments. A local group calling themselves the Local Businesses for a Strong Economy is challenging Lowe's proposal, and it will significantly have a negative impact on other small businesses in the area. This idea, coupled with a recent economic evaluation of Lowe's commissioned by this group, shows that jobs in the area will also be negatively impacted. Open Cape, the regional broadband system, could be up and running by the end of June. The fiber optic cable system completed 350-mile installation and is currently testing the system, and it could take several weeks. CapeNet has a long-term agreement to run and maintain the system and currently has about a dozen customers already signed up, including the Otis Air National Guard base. Able to carry voice and data speeds at well over 100 times faster than most Americans have today, the network will serve the region's communication needs for decades to come. From hospitals being able to instantly share information with experts anywhere in the world, to local businesses equipped to hire and retain employees and compete in the global economy. And now it's time for our interview with Ed Miles, who's a Vice President of Business Sales for Commercial Realty Advisors. Welcome, Ed.
Thank you, Ed.
One of the things that Ed deals with is buying businesses. And one of the most important things I've got to look at when buying a business is what?
What you're buying. Hopefully it's not somebody else's headache. What you're buying, what you're looking for when you buy a business, Ed, you're really looking for the cash flow. You're looking for the ability to make a living. That's what really comes down to.
And the ability to make a living and cash flow relates to the value of the purchase?
Absolutely. There's a lot of different ways that you can try to evaluate, put a valuation on a business, and all of them are subjective. You have to look at the business, the model, the competition. You have to take 2 or 3 of the different valuations and combine them to come up with a number, which is a sell number and also a buy number for the buyer.
Well, that's an interesting point that you make. When someone is selling a business, do they evaluate it the same way as someone buying a business?
No. It's completely different, and we have that big gap in between. Somebody selling the business is a lot more passionate about what they've done, their sweat equity, everything else that they've put into the business, somebody buying the business is trying to get as big a deal as they possibly can.
How do you define what are the assets of a business?
Well, there's assets of the business. Really, assets of the business, any of the machinery or any of the equipment that is used to produce the revenue are the assets, okay? The business itself is really on the amount of money and amount of revenue that it does drive. Unless you have, of course, intellectual property involved.
What's that?
That can be anything from proprietary information. It could be codes for a computer company. It could be patents, trademarks. It could be any or all of the above many times.
When people are selling businesses, Ed, sometimes you hear goodwill. How do you put any value on goodwill?
That is a tough one. Goodwill is always the sticking point. That is always where the profit margin comes in for the seller. Depending upon like the brand of the business, how long it's been established, the history, the sales. A lot of times people put in a lot of goodwill because the particular owner ran a great shop. He was a plumbing shop, but then you realize you're really not buying his company. You're only buying the assets of his company. So therefore, you may lose a lot of your customer base because his name is no longer associated with that business. And a portion of his customers may not stay because it was his name. He built the name.
Do you find a lot of buyers, Ed, that are more interested in properties that come with the real estate than not?
Depending on the times. Like right now, it's a good time to take a look at a business with the real estate. Real estates are available. Financing is probably, interest rates are at their lowest point right now. It looks like business loans are coming back now to being achievable for business with property. For business loans, you have to be creative. You really have to look at a little bit of your own financing, and then you could probably have some family and friends. You can look to the SBA. You can look to financial institutions. But depending upon the risk of the business will be whether or not the financial institution wants to really work with you.
And also, wouldn't seller financing enter into it too?
Seller financing for things like restaurant is almost imperative. You almost have to have some kind of that last mile seller financing that will make up the gap between what the bank will loan on the business, because they're only going to loan based on the assets, the net worth, if they broke the place up and sold it. They're not going to do any of the goodwill. They're not paying for any of that. So that last mile that you might have to come up with the money could be owner financing, and it's not always a bad deal for the owner.
Ed, in your estimation, when we're talking about brokers, when someone is buying a business, do you suggest a seller's broker, buyer's broker, and what's the difference between the two?
Well, I think a seller's broker is always going to be working for the seller. Obviously, they're going to be trying to get the most money, but they also have to be able to bring the seller, in many cases, down to earth. Again, like I said, when we opened, that a lot of people put a little bit more emphasis on what their heart, felt in their sweat equity and everything else. I've been here for 5 years. We put everything into it. That's not what the buyer's buying. The buyer, again, is buying the cash flow. So there's got to be cash flow there. A buyer's broker is very good because we do a lot of the due diligence that you wouldn't do, like how successful the business has been, especially local brokers. We're so diverse in our business listings. We'll sell everything from retail to restaurants to manufacturing to service. So we have a little bit of a handle on everything. So we kind of know what parameters we should be looking at and what demographics are good, what revenue streams can be anticipated for the buyer, and make sure the buyer's not paying too much.
I hope you've been taking notes because there's so much involved with this. Thank you, Ed Miles, for joining us. And also, when you're talking about buying, as you can see, because of the intricacies, as you suggested, Ed, maybe it's time for you to take a look at a buyer's broker, too. Thank you very much for joining us at Commercial Realty Advisors Newsbreak. And please be sure to check back at comrealty.net for our next edition of Newsbreak. I'm Ed Lambert.